To mount these tweeters in these back doors, unlike the way they did it with the passive crossovers down in here, these are actually pretty easy to get through. What I mean by that is if you remove the back seat, you can get this C-pillar off, which we have to remove the back seat anyways because that's where all the amplifiers are gonna go. We can then get these C-pillars off, which we need to get off anyway so we can run the wire. We can then run wires through, right? Magical. Now how do you get this back seat out? This one is fun. Remember when you first came here and you tried to take that back seat out?
Hi, my name is Fernando. And one of the challenges that I always...
Yeah, this one really killed him trying to get this back seat out. It's actually not that bad. The first thing you do is remove all the headrests. And if you can get past that, you're doing pretty well. Next is to remove this little guy here. There's a plastic piece on top of this that pops off, and there's two 10mm bolts.
And this one is only one.
Oh, bonus. There's only one 10mm underneath it, so you remove that. This isn't locking the seat down or anything. It's just you remove it because it makes it easier to get the seat up instead of having to like pull it around and get that out of the way.
It's just kind of like a reference where it has to go, so.
The next part is the tricky part. You have to stick your hand in like this, and you're gonna reach around and you're gonna feel for this straight piece of plastic that's on this bar right here. And what it is it's a piece of plastic that looks like this, and you're gonna bend it back. And when you bend it back, you'll be able to lift this seat up.
But also you have to push it down a little bit so you can bend it back.
This is true. A little exploratory push down. You can feel it give way. You good? And then just push up. It does help if you have two people. Nothing sucks worse than getting one side off and then going around to get the other side off, and then this side clips in. It's like, ugh, it's ridiculous. With the back seat out, you can now remove this C-pillar easily and also get an idea of what we need as far as room goes. You want to keep the amps low on this. You don't want to put them up high. There's not a lot of room up high. Sometimes in this area here, there's a power window motor. Lucky for us, there isn't one. So we'll be able to use majority of this space here to mount our amplifiers. This is shaped like this because behind these are those cool little vents that prevent the windows from blowing out when you shut the doors and also allow air to get into the car. You can remove one of them if you need to, but you definitely got to keep at least one of them.
For us to remove the side panel, it's a clip that goes in the corner right here. So you just grab your pry tool, pop it out. It's a 7mm in the top, and then from there, kind of move your side around. You have to remove the seatbelt.
Removing that panel will give you access to this grommet, which will give you a hole on this side. Fernando's going to walk us through the process in which he used to get that wire through now that we have the back seat out.
As you see, we ran a new wire all the way from here to here, but because we don't know if in some reason they're going to do a service on the door and the factory makes the plug right here, it's easy to unplug it, remove it, they can remove the whole thing. So what we did, made the connection in the inside part of it. So when they remove this, they can see the label that the connection, it's inside.
It says connection right here, which is hard to see because of the lighting and whatnot, but he made this cool, there we go.
So, and then for you to able to remove it, unplug it, this is gonna be our tweeter right here. Everything is zip tied up, same following the factory harness. It goes right here. Connection for our tweeter. We got our mid base over here that we're using the existing factory wire. Let me get the speaker mounted and then I'm gonna show you how it looks before I put the door panel back together. The door is all back together. Water barrier, it's back together, just like the factory. The speaker is mounted in place, of course. We have our tweeter. The easy way to do is just kind of put it from the bottom. It holds. Grab your tweeters, negative, positive, and then you got your thank you. And then this one comes out.
Yes, you do need 3 hands.
You need few hands, that's for sure. So this one over here in this corner, you gotta pay attention on this one because sometimes it get caught in those plastic and you don't want to smash the speaker wire.
I mean, the reality is that's just not a good place to put the tweeter anyways.
No, not at all, but
but we're playing with the cards that we were dealt, and that's where it was. He didn't want to buy a whole new panel just because they screwed this up. We have to be careful the way we put it back together to make sure we don't screw up our tweeter. The reason why I'm struggling with this is there's little teeth that have to get put into these holes, and all of them have to line up, and then the whole door will slide down. And if you don't get them all, you gotta pull it back up and start over.
Yeah. 2 6mm in the top, 1 6mm in the bottom, 2 10s, clips. Don't forget to do your seatbelt, and that's it.
So some of you are like, man, I really wish I could put a tweeter in my rear door like this. Couple things that you should kind of pay attention to. One, try to put it on a flat area. The reality is this gray area here would have been a much better place for the tweeter because it's flat. However, I don't know what's behind this. It might not have fit here. They probably didn't do a lot of experimenting. The other thing too is you want to get it further back here in the door panel, because you got to figure when we shut this door, it's going to be right here next to this. All right, so we have to make sure we attenuate this tweeter down, because this is a very loud tweeter and we don't want it to just, that's all you hear. Preferably the coaxial would be the move. Put one here and just call it a day, but just something to keep in mind. Flat area, more towards the rear. Now it's time to get this big boy tweeter into this guy here. This has a really big mount on it. It's not tiny, and this grill, well, you know, it's not the most easy thing to get the speaker into. I can see why they tried to put the smaller speaker in here. However, the hole opening is okay. It's just this has such a big mount around it. So I'm not worried about getting the sound through. It'll carry through. And we can make a funnel so that it all goes out the grill, which is nice, but it's just figuring out how to get this guy in here, then of course have it fit back in the car. Conveniently enough, we've done these tweeters before, so I actually have a diagram of this layout. It's just a matter of modifying that layout so that it will house this big tweeter. My thought is I'm just going to cut one of these real quick so that I can have an actual piece in my hand, because that's always nice. And then from there, we'll make adjustments to it in the software so that we can get one that fits perfect and mounts that tweeter just like that. Now to do that, I need to change my inner size here to the new tweeter, which is a lot bigger, almost 0.4 inches bigger. And it's so much bigger now, it's bigger than the outside trim ring, which is kind of funny. We'll have to do some modifications to this to get that new piece to fit. And we'll kind of do like we did on the last one, where we just copied it into the same size. Make it a little bigger. Let's see how big the outside diameter of this guy is. 0.9. It's really thin. We'll have to give it a go. Move some of the old pieces. Now I'll just clean this up and we'll print it and see what it looks like. I printed out what we drew. It's super thin. I mean, it's like 0.1 thickness. And what I forgot to equate for is on the K2 tweeter, there's a little tiny nipple, like we were talking before, these friction rings. When you're cutting something this thin, it has to be perfect, and I didn't equate to add that in. So naturally, this snapped in half as soon as I went to put it on, because it was way tighter than it should have been. So it's something I have to add in to the next one, but I can still use it as a mock-up to kind of figure out how everything needs to go and what I need to do to it, so that for one, that won't happen again, and I could make one that will work. But I can go a little bit thicker than I made this one. As you can see, I made this one oh so thin, and this is the nipple here. It's a little line right there that caused me all the heartache. I'm also gonna add in some arms that come off of here and make it not so simple shape and make it a little bit thicker. We started with this idea here and it modified into this idea here. I had mentioned we were gonna fatten these areas up. Can't go all the way down because of the way the screw mounts are. There's little teeth here. I wanna make sure those stay because those help to lock this all in place. I fattened this up just a little bit, like ever so slightly, and I added that tooth to it. And with that, the tweeter will now come in, carefully line the tooth up, rotate a little bit, and then work it left to right, very, very tight. My tweeter is mounted into place. This is one is made out of white acrylic. I do have an idea that I want to also add to this, is I'm going to print a second version of this, minus the screw holes, and glue it onto this, making this twice as thick this way. This one is just a test fit to make sure that it's the way it needs to be. Drop it into place. This is thicker than the factory screws, so I have swapped them out for 1/2 inch. And that gets me my tweeter mounted into place. But let's take this over to the car before we do anything and make sure this will now fit into the vehicle. The driver's side, this is perfectly smooth. There's nothing on it. But for some reason on the passenger side, they have this wire here I've already removed it just because I don't want to take a chance of it screwing up. And it's easy enough to just move it out of the way. This has these little feet here on the bottom that allow you to line it up. You kind of come at it at an angle, putting the bottom in first, and then there's the clip on the top. I'm super happy with the fact that this actually goes in. That's awesome. So we know it fits. That means I can make those modifications that I want to make to it, get it all put back together so that I can hand it off to Fernando and he can pretty it all up and make it look sexy. And that is with the second piece glued on, adding that extra height to it, making it a bit thicker. It allows me to still use those 1/2 inch screws. It will still fit into place like so. Before I screw it down though, I'm gonna let Fernando get his Tech Flex and butt connectors and stuff like that on it. I'm just gonna add in my screws so we don't lose them. If you notice while I was screwing these in, I was using a Phillips screwdriver. I can't stress this enough. Anytime you're doing something into a panel, do it by hand. The drill is your best friend when unscrewing, but screwing back in. There you go.